Pennsylvania isn't just haunted by prisons, mansions, and graveyards. Its forests, rivers, mountains, and caves carry stories even older than the towns that grew around them. Legends of Native American spirits, Civil War soldiers, witches, and creatures that don't belong in this world are carved deep into the state's landscape. They say the earth remembers, the rocks hold screams, and the rivers whisper names. In Pennsylvania, it's not always the buildings that trap restless souls, it's the land itself. There are stretches of road where headlights die without reason. Forests where hunters vanish without a trace. Waterfalls where visitors swear they've seen pale figures standing on the rocks, watching in silence. And caves so deep and twisted, explorers hear whispers echoing through stone, even when they're completely alone. Tonight we step into that wilderness. Not the safety of locked doors or brick walls, but the raw, open places where darkness has no boundaries. 15 natural sites where legends refuse to die, where the air feels heavier, and where the bravest hikers and campers sometimes don't make it back. By the time we're done, you may never look at Pennsylvania's mountains or rivers the same way again. Because out there, in the woods, under the stars, no one can hear you scream. Haunted Natural Place Number 1. Penn's Cave and Wildlife Park, Center Hall, Pennsylvania. Penn's Cave is more than a geological wonder, it is a tomb of legend, carved from stone and sorrow. The Seneca once called this place sacred, but their stories tell of Nita Nay, a maiden who fell in love with a French trapper named Malachi Boyer. Their love was forbidden, and when it was discovered, Malachi was seized and thrown into the cave, left to starve and drown in the eternal dark. They say his spirit lingers in the dripping chambers, restless and vengeful. Tourists on the boat tours whisper of sudden chills that cut through the cavern air, as though icy fingers are brushing their skin. Some hear voices, soft and echoing, calling the name Nita Nay. Others swear they glimpse a pale figure at the cavern's edge, only to watch it vanish the moment they turn to face it. The cave itself seems alive. The water reflects shadows that do not belong to those present. Cameras fail. Breath turns heavy. The silence is broken not by the guides, but by whispers that slide along the stone walls. The legend says Penn's Cave swallowed a man once, and his death cry lingers in its depths. Number 2. Spook Woods, Clearfield County, Pennsylvania. Spook Woods is not a place you stumble into by accident, it is a place the locals warn you about in hushed voices. At first glance, it looks like any patch of Pennsylvania forest, but the deeper you walk, the more the trees seem to twist inward, closing you off from the world outside. Travelers who wander too far say they feel watched, as if hundreds of unseen eyes are tracking their every step. Growls echo through the underbrush, low and guttural, but no animal ever reveals itself. The sound circles you, moving from one side of the path to the other like something stalking you just out of sight. Hikers have reported glowing orbs weaving between the trees, too bright to be fireflies, too deliberate to be tricks of the light. Some describe the orbs rushing directly at them before fading into nothing just as they brace for impact. It is not only sounds and lights that plague Spook Woods. Many speak of footsteps pacing alongside them, heavy and deliberate, as though someone unseen is following in perfect rhythm. When they stop, the footsteps stop. When they run, the steps chase them, keeping pace until they break into the clearing again. The few who dared to camp overnight left before dawn, shaken and pale, claiming that they woke to whispers around their tent, voices too faint to understand but close enough to raise the hair on the back of their necks. Some heard the zipper of their tent tugged from the outside. Others swore the ground shook with the thud of something circling in the darkness. Stories say Spook Woods is cursed ground, a place where men vanished during the logging days of the 1800s, never found, their bodies swallowed by the forest. Whether it is their spirits or something older, no one dares to say. But if you enter Spook Woods, do not linger. The forest does not forgive trespassers. Number 3. Cook Forest Cemetery, Cook Forest, Pennsylvania. Cook Forest is already known as one of the darkest, most mysterious stretches of woodland in Pennsylvania, but hidden deep within its trees lies a cemetery that locals whisper about with unease. The Cook Forest Cemetery looks small and unassuming, just rows of weathered stones and crooked markers sinking into the soil, yet one grave here has baffled visitors for generations. It is marked by an ordinary headstone, but at its base rests a smooth, perfectly round stone sphere. No one knows who placed it there or why, but every person who has studied it agrees on one fact. The stone moves. Not rolled by animals, not pushed by vandals, it shifts on its own. Some days it leans to the left, other days it presses against the headstone as if drawn by a force beneath the ground. Locals say the sphere reacts to the dead buried there, as if the spirit beneath refuses to stay still. On moonlit nights, people who dare to approach the grave say the sphere vibrates, humming softly like a heartbeat. Some have placed it carefully back in the center, only to return the next day and find it leaning against the marker once again. No explanation has ever been found, yet the movement continues, decade after decade. Visitors also report strange feelings as they stand near the grave. The temperature drops, the air feels heavy, and many describe a tightness in the chest, as though something unseen presses against them. A few claim to have heard whispers rising from the earth itself, faint and broken, as if someone buried below is trying to speak through the soil. The cemetery is quiet but not peaceful. Many leave shaken, swearing they were watched the entire time, their eyes pulled again and again to that impossible stone. Some believe it is a marker of a restless soul. Others insist it is cursed, a warning to anyone who lingers too long among the graves. In Cook Forest Cemetery, the dead do not sleep easy. And if you find yourself staring at that sphere, be careful, because whatever moves it may decide to turn its attention toward you next. Number 4. Hawk Mountain Sanctuary, Berks County, Pennsylvania. Hawk Mountain Sanctuary is famous for its sweeping views of endless forests and for the hundreds of hawks and eagles that ride the wind above its cliffs every year. Birdwatchers and hikers come here for beauty and peace, but those who stay past sunset whisper a very different story. They speak of a curse that clings to these trails, a shadowy presence that has haunted this mountain for centuries. Long ago, Native American legends warned that this mountain was a place where spirits walked freely. They said warriors who fell in battle lingered on the cliffs, their voices carried by the wind, their shapes flashing in the treeline. Early settlers called the slopes cursed, claiming that livestock would vanish without a trace, and that strange lights moved between the trees at night as if guided by unseen hands. Modern hikers tell of something even more disturbing. Many claim to have seen a towering figure on the ridge, a dark silhouette standing nearly 10 feet tall, far larger than any man. It never moves quickly, never runs, but it watches. Always watches. Some describe glowing eyes staring down from the cliff's edge, while others say the figure appears in the path ahead, blocking the way, only to vanish when approached. The air itself on Hawk Mountain feels unnatural after dark. Cold spots bloom even in summer heat, and compasses are said to spin uselessly. There are reports of entire groups hearing whispers at once, the voices rising and falling like a chant, impossible to understand yet deeply unsettling. A few ghost hunters who ventured here swear they stumbled upon something like a seance in progress, though no one living was present. Candles, strange markings in the dirt, and the electric charge of energy so heavy it made their hair stand on end. By morning, every trace of it was gone. Some locals believe the mountain itself hungers for souls, drawing people in with its beauty and keeping a part of them forever. Lost hikers are often reported in these woods, and though most are found, some vanish completely. Searchers say the forest closes in at night, trails seem to change direction, and an unseen pressure weighs down on anyone who lingers too long. If you ever find yourself at Hawk Mountain Sanctuary and you feel the urge to look over your shoulder, do not ignore it. Because the shadow on the ridge may not be a trick of the light. It may be something ancient, something bound to this mountain, waiting for you to step just a little further into the darkness. Number 5. Wrecks Covered Bridge, North Whitehall Township, Pennsylvania. Wrecks Covered Bridge looks like something pulled from an old photograph. A narrow wooden span painted deep red, stretching quietly across the Jordan Creek. By day it feels harmless, a relic of another time, its timbers creaking gently as cars roll across. But at night, when the sun has vanished and the water below churns in shadows, this bridge is said to become a trap for the living. Travelers tell of a pulsing mist that rises from the creek and swallows the bridge whole. The fog does not drift like normal mist, it clings to the wood, curling and thickening until the world outside the bridge disappears completely. Once you are inside it, sound changes. Your footsteps echo strangely, your voice comes back to you as if whispered by someone standing directly behind you. Some claim they hear soft sobbing that grows louder with each step, though when they turn, the bridge is empty. Legends say the pale figure of a woman drifts in and out of this mist. She calls to travelers, sometimes in a soft voice, sometimes in a desperate cry. Locals whisper she was a bride who drowned in the creek on her wedding night, her carriage tumbling from the bridge into the water below. Others say she was a young mother who leapt from the bridge, clutching her child, their bodies never found. Whoever she was, her spirit is said to still wander here, luring strangers into the fog. Witnesses describe seeing her face first, pale as chalk, emerging from the darkness at the far end of the bridge. Her eyes are hollow, wide and searching, her dress soaked and torn as if she had just crawled out of the river. If you walk toward her, she does not move away. She waits, motionless, until she vanishes in the thick air, leaving only the sound of splashing water beneath your feet. Some travelers claim the bridge itself shifts at that moment, the timbers groaning, the entire structure trembling as if something enormous passed overhead. A handful of ghost hunters who tested the legend swear that electronic devices cut out as soon as the mist appears. Flashlights flicker, batteries die, and recordings are filled with static punctuated by faint, breathless words. One investigator recounted that when he played back his audio, a woman's voice whispered his name over and over, though he had been completely alone. The people of North Whitehall avoid Rex-covered bridge after sundown, saying the mist follows you home if you linger too long. Some even claim to have awakened in the night to the sound of dripping water inside their bedroom, only to find the faint outline of a woman standing silently at the foot of their bed. So if you ever cross Rex-covered bridge, hold your breath when the fog rolls in, and do not follow the voice that calls your name. Because once you step into that pulsing mist, you may never find your way out again. Number 6. Buck Hill Falls, Pocono Mountains, Pennsylvania. Deep in the Pocono Mountains lies Buck Hill Falls, a place of breathtaking beauty by day and overwhelming dread by night. The land itself seems alive, the trees leaning too close to the narrow trails, the sound of rushing water echoing with strange undertones that feel more like whispers than flowing streams. It is here that countless stories have been born, tales of sorrow, despair, and something far darker than the wilderness itself. In the early days of Buck Hill Falls' reputation, whispers spread of a maid who served at the grand resort that once stood here. She is seen to remember. Guests reported hearing the frantic sobs of women echoing through empty hallways, their cries bouncing off locked doors in the dead of night. Locals speak of the waterfalls themselves as cursed. People who wander too close claim to hear footsteps behind them, soft at first, then running, chasing until they whirl around and find no one there. Some have even said a pale woman is seen at the falls, her dress clinging to her body as if soaked through, her face blurred, her arms reaching outward before she vanishes into the spray. The air grows colder in her presence, and some claim to smell damp earth and mildew as though standing in a sealed tomb. There are darker theories too, that the land is twisted by something more ancient. Buck Hill Falls is said by some researchers to rest on a convergence of ley lines, channels of energy that intensify paranormal activity. Compasses spin wildly here, and even seasoned hikers lose their way on trails they know by heart. Electronic devices drain in seconds, and silence falls unnaturally thick as though the woods themselves are holding their breath. Former staff members of the resort, before it was abandoned, told of nightly disturbances. Windows would shatter without reason, doors slammed shut with force enough to rattle the entire floor, and mirrors cracked while no one was in the room. One chilling story describes a maid's cart that rolled down an empty hallway on its own, the squeak of its wheels echoing until it stopped abruptly, as if pushed by invisible hands. Today the grand resort has crumbled into ruin, its hollow windows like empty eyes staring into the forest. Urban explorers who sneak into its remains leave with shaking hands, claiming to hear footsteps pacing behind them, voices whispering in their ears, or the unmistakable sound of a woman crying just out of sight. One explorer reported feeling a sudden shove against his back that sent him stumbling toward a broken staircase, narrowly avoiding a fatal fall. Visitors say the air grows heavy the moment you approach Buck Hill Falls. As you near the water, you may hear the faint echo of sobbing blending with the roar of the stream. Some say the water itself reflects things that are not truly there, faces watching from beneath the surface, eyes that blink before fading back into the current. The Pocono Mountains are filled with legends, but Buck Hill Falls stands apart. For here, beauty hides sorrow, and sorrow feeds something older, darker, and far more dangerous than a broken heart. If you ever wander too close to the falls after sundown, be warned. You may not be alone, and the cries you hear may not stop once you leave. Number 7. Devil's Elbow Natural Area, Lycoming County, Pennsylvania. In the shadowed heart of Lycoming County lies a stretch of forest known as Devil's Elbow. By daylight it looks like any other quiet natural reserve, with green canopy overhead, winding paths, and the calls of birds that seem to welcome travelers deeper into the woods. But as dusk falls, the atmosphere changes. The air grows colder, the woods fall silent, and the bend in the trail known as the elbow takes on a presence that feels almost alive. Locals warn that once you pass through, you are walking into more than a forest. You are stepping into a place where the past has never truly gone. For generations, stories have been whispered of a lady in white who drifts among the trees. Some say she appears on foggy nights, her pale figure glowing faintly in the darkness, her dress long and tattered, her face hidden by a veil of hair. Others claim she walks silently across the dirt paths, never leaving a footprint behind, her presence accompanied by an icy wind that chills the skin and leaves breath hanging heavy in the air. She is not a figure you simply see, she is a presence you feel. A pull. A sorrow. A warning. The legends differ on who she was. Some insist she was a woman who lived in the valley long ago, taken too soon by an accident on the treacherous trails. Others say she was a bride left waiting at the altar, wandering the woods forever in grief. A darker story speaks of murder, a jealous lover who ended her life near the elbow, her spirit bound to the very soil where her blood was spilled. Regardless of which tale you believe, the haunting remains the same. She is there, and she does not rest. Travelers have told of hearing footsteps following them, though no one is near. Some describe the sensation of being watched from the shadows, a gaze that presses heavily on their back until they quicken their pace. More chilling are the accounts of her appearing directly in front of hikers, blocking the path in silence. One man swore she lifted her head, revealing hollow, empty sockets where eyes should have been, before vanishing into the mist. At night, the forest twists itself into something unwelcoming. Trees appear closer than they should, the path seems to stretch endlessly, and sounds echo unnaturally through the valley. Some who have ventured into Devil's Elbow after dark speak of sudden fog that rolls in without warning, thick and suffocating, making every direction feel the same. Within that fog, the lady in white is said to whisper, her voice soft, almost kind, drawing you deeper until you no longer know the way back. Those who return often carry the same haunted look, muttering about cold hands brushing their arms, or the sound of crying that faded into laughter. Devices fail without reason, batteries drain instantly, and animals refuse to go near the bend. Even hunters and seasoned outdoorsmen, people who know the forest well, will not camp within Devil's Elbow. They say the silence alone is enough to drive a person to madness. Legends warn that if you see the lady in white too closely, it is not a blessing. It is a curse. For once her face is revealed, she is bound to you. She may follow you out of the woods, appearing in reflections, lingering at the edge of your vision, or standing silently at the foot of your bed when you wake in the night. Many locals say the safest choice is simple. Do not linger at Devil's Elbow after dark. Do not answer if you hear a woman calling your name. And above all, never look directly into her face. Number 8. Centralia, Columbia County, Pennsylvania. There are ghost towns scattered across America, but none quite like Centralia. Hidden in Columbia County, it looks abandoned, broken, and scarred. Streets stretch into nothing, lined with crumbling foundations, street signs pointing toward empty fields, and a silence so deep it feels unnatural. But Centralia is no ordinary ghost town. Beneath its cracked earth burns a fire that has been raging for over 6 decades, an underground mine fire that refuses to die, slowly consuming everything in its path. The story begins in 1962, when a landfill fire was mistakenly allowed to spread into an old coal seam below the town. What should have been a controlled blaze became a disaster that no one could stop. The fire ignited the veins of coal that ran for miles beneath Centralia, and from that moment on, the town was doomed. Streets buckled, homes collapsed, smoke seeped through the ground in thick, poisonous clouds. Families fled, businesses shuttered, and one by one, the people of Centralia vanished. What remains today is something far stranger than ruins. The fire still burns underground, a constant reminder that the earth itself is alive with destruction. Visitors who walk the abandoned highways report seeing smoke curl up through the cracks, twisting into strange shapes, sometimes forming what looks like faces staring back at them. Drivers passing through say the mist forms into shadowy figures that drift across the road before dissolving into the haze. Locals whisper that the spirits of Centralia's past residents never left. Some claim to hear voices echoing faintly through the smoke, calling names or crying out in pain. Others describe the sounds of footsteps crunching on gravel, though they walk alone. Perhaps most chilling are the accounts of ghostly figures standing still in the distance, their silhouettes blurred by steam, watching silently until the smoke swallows them whole. The most infamous part of Centralia is the abandoned section of Route 61, known as the Graffiti Highway. It is now covered in spray paint, words and images scrawled by trespassers, yet even here the paranormal lingers. Some visitors swear the ground vibrates beneath their feet, as if the fire below is breathing. A few report sudden drops in temperature, unnatural cold that settles into their bones, followed by the sensation of being followed by something unseen. The fire has burned so long that no one knows when it will stop. Experts say it could continue for hundreds of years, a smoldering, endless curse beneath the soil. But the legends are darker. They say the fire is not just fuel and heat, but something else, something ancient awakened when the ground was torn open. Some call it a gateway, a thin place where the living and the dead overlap, where lost souls wander in the smoke, never finding peace. If you stand long enough in Centralia, the silence plays tricks on you. You hear the creak of doors that no longer exist, the ringing of church bells from churches long destroyed, the echo of children laughing, though no one has lived here for decades. Some people leave shaken, convinced they have walked through a place that should not exist. Others never return at all, too disturbed by the sensation that the town itself is watching, waiting, alive. Centralia is a scar on the earth, a place where fire and ghost stories intertwine, where the ground itself exhales smoke like a dying beast, and where you are never truly alone, even when the streets are empty. Number 9. Devil's Road, Chadds Ford, Pennsylvania. They call it Devil's Road, a narrow stretch of forest-lined asphalt winding through Chadds Ford, and every inch of it feels wrong. The trees here do not grow straight, they bend and twist unnaturally, their gnarled branches curling inward as if reaching for anyone brave enough to pass beneath them. Even in daylight, the road feels cloaked in shadow, but when night falls, Devil's Road becomes something else entirely, a place where folklore and terror bleed into reality. Locals warn travelers to avoid it after dark. Too many stories circle around this stretch of road, whispers of glowing eyes that appear in the woods, watching silently from the tree line. Drivers say headlights flicker here, radios cut to static, and in the silence that follows, the forest seems to close in thick with a presence that waits, breathing, unseen. Some who dared to stop their cars on Devil's Road have reported pale figures emerging from the treeline, only to vanish when approached, leaving behind a lingering chill in the air. But the road is more than just ghostly apparitions. Its reputation is steeped in older, darker legends. Some say secret cults once gathered deep within these woods, their rituals leaving behind curses that infected the land itself. The warped trees, with their grotesque shapes, are believed by many to be scarred by something unholy, as if the earth recoiled from the rituals performed upon it. One of the most frightening tales involves a place known to locals as the Cult House, a ruined structure hidden among the trees. Some claim it once belonged to a wealthy family who practiced strange rites, including sacrificing their own children to ensure eternal wealth and power. Though the house itself has mostly collapsed, explorers insist the air around the ruins feels thick, unnatural, and sometimes glows with a sickly light, as though the earth remembers what was done there. Even passing through Devil's Road leaves its mark. People often return home with scratches on their cars, long gouges across the paint as though clawed by unseen hands. Others report the sense of being followed long after leaving, as if something attached itself to them in the shadows and rode along quietly, waiting. The forest here is not silent, but its sounds are wrong. Travelers describe hearing footsteps in the leaves that keep pace with them, heavy and deliberate, though no one is visible. At times, faint whispers rise from the trees, low and unintelligible, yet impossible to ignore. Some claim the whispers are invitations, others believe they are warnings. The further you travel down Devil's Road, the stronger the feeling grows that the forest itself is alive, watching, and deciding whether or not you should leave. So if you ever find yourself on this cursed stretch of road, keep your eyes on the twisted trees, and pray that the eyes staring back at you from the darkness belong to an animal, and not something far worse. Number 10. Hickory Run State Park, Carbon County, Pennsylvania. Hickory Run State Park is famous for its vast, eerie boulder fields, a landscape unlike anything else in the region. By day, It looks almost alien, a sea of gray stones stretching into the distance. Tourists come to marvel at the endless expanse of jagged rock. But when night falls, the boulder field takes on a far more sinister air, for this is where the Lehigh Valley Witch is said to wander. According to legend, she was once a woman accused of witchcraft in the early days of settlement. Hunted by fearful villagers, she fled into the wilderness and was never seen alive again. Some say she died among these boulders, her spirit fusing with the stones, cursed to remain forever. Others whisper that she was no victim at all, that she chose this place because it was already a source of dark power, a natural altar to something far older than mankind. Hikers who venture out onto the rocks at night speak of strange sounds, footsteps crunching on stone though no one is there, and the low murmur of a woman's voice drifting through the wind. Some report seeing her directly, a pale figure in tattered clothing standing among the stones, her long hair blowing though there is no breeze. She is often described as raising her arms, calling out to the moon, her voice carrying a haunting rhythm, half song and half scream. Those who follow the sound often become disoriented, losing their way in the endless field of rocks, stumbling until they can no longer tell where they entered. There are darker accounts still. Travelers claim that if you make eye contact with the Lehigh Valley Witch, you will not escape unscathed. Some return with scratches down their arms, others with voices in their heads that linger for days. A few never return at all, swallowed by the endless boulders as though the stones themselves consumed them. What makes this place so unsettling is that the boulder field already feels unnatural, even without the legend. It stretches nearly 16 acres, completely barren of life, silent except for the wind. At night, under a full moon, the stones glow faintly, and shadows stretch unnaturally long. Geologists explain it as a natural wonder, but locals know better. They say the rocks hold memories soaked in centuries of ritual and death, and the witch's voice is just one echo of that deeper, darker power. So if you ever visit Hickory Run and feel the pull of the boulders at night, resist it. Because the Lehigh Valley Witch is still there, waiting, her pale figure standing against the moonlight, calling you closer, step by step, until the stones close in and you vanish forever. Number 11. Burn Bray Mansion Grounds, Forestburg, Pennsylvania. At first glance, Burn Bray Mansion is enchanting. Built in the late 1800s, this Victorian estate rises above the trees like a relic of another age, its tall windows and ornate trim evoking the wealth and elegance of the families who once called it home. Today, it stands as part of a retreat property, welcoming visitors curious about its history. But ask anyone who has spent a night there, and they will tell you that Burn Bray is far more than an architectural marvel. It is a place where the past refuses to rest. The hauntings here are deeply tied to children. Guests often report the faint sound of giggling echoing down the hallways, even when no children are present. Tiny footsteps patter across the wooden floors at midnight, stopping suddenly as though the unseen little ones realize they've been noticed. On the grounds outside, shadowy figures have been spotted darting between the trees, small shapes that vanish the moment you look directly at them. Inside, the activity intensifies. Doors creak open by themselves, objects shift across tables, and bedsheets tug as though invisible hands are playing at the edge. The Blue Room in particular is said to be the heart of the haunting. Guests who spend the night there describe cold drafts that sweep the room, whispering voices that rise from the corners, and the unmistakable weight of someone sitting at the edge of the bed even when no one is there. Some researchers believe the mansion's energy stems from tragedies that befell the families who lived there. Old records speak of illness that swept through the region, taking children before their time. Others whisper that Burn Bray's original owners dabbled in spiritualism, attempting seances on the estate grounds in hopes of contacting the dead. Whether intentional or accidental, it seems something answered, and it has never left. The grounds are no less unsettling. Visitors walking the estate gardens have described hearing their names called in sing-song voices, as though children are playing hide-and-seek just beyond sight. Some claim to have seen a pale figure in old-fashioned clothing lingering at the tree line, watching silently before disappearing into the woods. Burn Bray Mansion is beautiful, yes, but its beauty is only a mask. Behind it lies a restless sadness, a lingering sorrow that seeps into every room, every corner, every breath of cold night air. If you ever wander its halls and hear laughter where none should be, do not follow it. For those children never grew up and their games are not meant for the living. If you think Burn Bray Mansion is haunted, wait till you see the natural place. Number 12. Bolton Mansion Grounds, Levittown, Pennsylvania. The Bolton Mansion sits quietly in Bucks County, a colonial farmhouse first built in the 1680s. Its weathered stone walls and sloping roof carry more than 3 centuries of history, sheltering generations who worked the fields and endured the hardships of a young America. But the land it rests on holds memories that refuse to fade. For during the Revolutionary War, soldiers passed through these fields and some never returned home. Visitors who walk the grounds today often speak of ghostly figures drifting across the open fields at dusk. Some are dressed in tattered colonial clothing, their forms pale and translucent, marching silently toward a horizon no longer there. Others describe the distinct sound of musket fire cracking in the night air, followed by cries of pain, yet when they turn, the fields are empty and the silence is absolute. One of the most disturbing encounters comes from those who have toured the mansion itself. In the attic, where old beams creak under the weight of centuries, guests have heard boots pacing slowly back and forth. At times, a soldier's shadow is seen moving against the wall, though no figure stands there. Downstairs, the scent of pipe tobacco lingers in rooms that have not been smoked in for more than 100 years, as though an officer still takes his rest between battles. Children playing near the property have reported seeing men in tri-corner hats standing at the tree line, watching in silence before vanishing. Adults confirm it too, often catching sight of figures only in their peripheral vision, a glimpse of a red or blue uniform fading into the twilight. It is as if the revolutionary echoes are caught in a loop here, playing themselves out again and again across the mansion grounds. Some say it is not tragedy alone that binds them, but duty. That the soldiers of Bolton Mansion remain to guard the land they once fought to protect, even in death. The Bolton Mansion is more than a historic landmark. It is a reminder that history is not always past. Sometimes, it lingers, whispering on the wind, marching across the fields and staring at us from shadows we cannot quite explain. If you stand long enough among those haunted grounds, you may hear it too, the distant roll of a drum, calling ghostly soldiers back to war. Number 13. Bedford Springs, Bedford, Pennsylvania. Nestled in the Allegheny Mountains, the springs at Bedford have long been regarded as a place of power. Native tribes first visited the waters, believing they carried spiritual and medicinal properties. Later, wealthy travelers from across the young nation came to the site, lured by the promise of cures for ailments that doctors could not heal. For nearly 2 centuries, the resort built around the springs became a sanctuary for those seeking relief. But for many, the waters offered no salvation. Instead, they died here, their final breaths echoing among the mountains. Today, the springs remain beautiful, their clear waters shimmering under the moonlight. Yet those who linger here after dark say beauty is only a mask. Visitors walking along the banks of the springs hear music drifting softly across the water, faint strings, the melancholy chords of a piano, or voices singing in harmony. The sounds are rich and distinct, yet when one searches for the source, the forest is silent. No band, no musician, no gathering. Only the rippling water and the heavy, watching stillness of the night. Some claim to have seen figures gliding across the surface of the springs themselves, pale outlines of women in 19th-century gowns. They walk as though attending some grand ball, their movements slow and graceful, yet their faces are void of features. Witnesses describe them vanishing in an instant, their gowns trailing into mist that dissipates into the air. The surrounding forest is no less unsettling. Shadows move among the trees, some towering and human-shaped, others crawling low to the ground. Hikers report footsteps crunching leaves just behind them, though no one is ever there. A few insist they have heard weeping in the woods, soft at first, then louder, until it seems to circle them entirely. Yet when they flee, the sound cuts off, replaced by silence so sudden it feels suffocating. Legends say that those who came to Bedford Springs seeking healing may not have left. Their souls wander the grounds, trapped between hope and despair. Some even believe the waters themselves absorbed the grief and sickness of those who bathed in them, making the springs not a place of life, but a well of sorrow feeding the hauntings around it. Even now, guests who stay in the historic hotel nearby often speak of waking to faint music drifting through their windows, accompanied by the sense that someone is standing at their bedside. The springs may promise beauty and peace in daylight, but when darkness falls, it becomes a stage for ghostly gatherings, a reminder that not all who came here found rest. If you ever find yourself by the waters of Bedford Springs at night, listen carefully. You may hear the echoes of music that has not been played in centuries. And if you see figures dancing on the water, do not follow. For they are not of this world, and they may lead you deeper into the shadows than you can ever return. But the springs are not the only natural place in Pennsylvania where sorrow lingers. Journey a little further, and the ground itself begins to whisper. The air thickens, and the trees seem to bend in submission to something unseen. Our next destination will test the courage of anyone who dares to wander its haunted paths. Number 14. Fort Mifflin Grounds, Philadelphia Riverbank. On the edge of the Delaware River lies Fort Mifflin, a site forever etched into the soil by war, blood, and death. Built in the 1700s, it became the stage for one of the bloodiest sieges of the Revolutionary War. Soldiers fought and fell here by the hundreds, their cries mingling with the roar of cannon fire and the stench of smoke. Though the battles ended long ago, those cries have never stopped. The grounds surrounding the old fort are deceptively quiet in daylight. The river shimmers, the breeze stirs the grass, and the historic walls stand like silent witnesses to history. Yet as night falls, a change comes. Visitors describe the air growing dense, thick with an unseen weight, as though the soil itself remembers. Many have reported hearing the clash of muskets, the thunder of phantom cannon fire, and the shouts of men locked in battle, though the fields remain empty. And then there is the Screaming Lady. Her wail is said to pierce the silence of the riverbank, echoing across the darkened grounds with a sound so raw, so anguished, it chills the blood of anyone who hears it. Some believe she was a grieving woman who lost her children here. Others say she is the restless soul of Elizabeth Pratt, a woman who lived near the fort and suffered a tragedy that drove her to despair. Her identity remains uncertain, but her voice is undeniable. Eyewitnesses have described hearing her cry so suddenly, so close, that it felt as though she were standing just behind them. Yet when they turned, there was no one, only the rolling mist off the Delaware. The grounds themselves are alive with shadows. Dark figures have been seen darting between the old cannons. Apparitions in tattered uniforms patrol the shoreline, their faces half melted in the glow of lantern light that vanishes without explanation. Even the earth trembles beneath some visitors' feet, as though recalling the impact of cannonballs from centuries ago. Those who linger too long often leave shaken. Some speak of an overwhelming despair that grips their chest, making it hard to breathe. Others feel pursued, stalked by unseen eyes from the trees and ruins. A few have even claimed to awaken from sleep near the grounds to find themselves surrounded by ghostly soldiers, standing silent, watching, their bayonets glinting before the figures dissolve into darkness. Fort Mifflin is not just haunted by spirits. It is haunted by pain itself, a place where war tore open the fabric of life and the echoes have never healed. The river runs on, indifferent, but the cries of the lost endure, carried on the mist, across the fields, and deep into the marrow of all who dare to stand there. And yet, as chilling as the Screaming Lady's wail may be, there is still one final place in Pennsylvania where nature itself becomes the prison of the dead. A place where silence is more terrifying than sound. Where even the bravest hesitate to step foot after dark. Our journey is about to end, but not before we confront the most unsettling haunted ground of them all. Number 15. Pine-Loganton Road, Clinton County. Few places in Pennsylvania inspire more whispered warnings than this unassuming country road. Winding through dense forest and shadowed valleys, Pine-Loganton Road appears like any other rustic stretch of countryside until the sun sets. That is when the air grows strange, colder than it should be, as if you have stepped across an invisible threshold. Those who know the stories urge you not to stop, not to linger. Because once you do, this road begins to play its tricks. One of the strangest legends tied to Pine-Loganton is that of the dancing cupboard. Yes, a cupboard, but not any ordinary piece of furniture. Witnesses claim to have seen the ghostly outline of a large wooden cupboard appearing in the road, swaying from side to side as though mocking gravity itself. It is said to shimmer, translucent, before vanishing in an instant. Some drivers have swerved violently to avoid hitting it, only to find themselves skidding across empty pavement. Others insist they saw it shuffle toward the treeline, its doors rattling open and shut with an otherworldly clatter. What was once mundane has become terrifying, a household relic transformed into a spectral omen. But the cupboard is not the only terror here. Many who travel Pine-Loganton Road describe swirling cold spots, pockets of air so icy they fog the inside of their cars in seconds, even on warm summer nights. Some claim these spots drift, following them like unseen predators, chilling their bones while a low hum fills the air. These cold zones often precede the appearance of shadow figures, pale forms crossing the road, vanishing into the woods, or sometimes standing motionless at the roadside, watching with eyes that are not entirely human. Then there are the reports of whispers. Travelers driving with windows cracked swear they've heard voices rising out of the dark forest. Sometimes it's laughter, cruel and distant. Other times it's the low murmur of a conversation that stops the instant you try to listen closer. But the most chilling accounts describe a voice calling from the trees, mimicking the sound of a loved one. One man swore he heard his late grandmother's voice calling his name. When he slowed, when he almost opened his door to look, the cold swept through his car and a figure lunged across the road before dissolving into mist. He never returned to Pine Loganton. The legends stretch back decades, perhaps longer. Some say the road was cursed by settlers who died in the unforgiving wilderness, their restless spirits tethered to the path. Others whisper that occult rituals were once held in these woods, rituals that cracked reality open just enough to let the unnatural slip through. Whatever the origin, the road is alive with energies that defy logic, a place where superstition and science collide and both fail to explain what lurks there. So, if you ever find yourself driving through Clinton County late at night, and your route takes you onto Pine Loganton Road, remember this: do not stop. Do not answer if a familiar voice calls from the woods. Do not follow the shifting shadows at the roadside. And if you see a cupboard standing alone where no cupboard should ever be, turn away. Because Pine Loganton Road is not just a path through the forest. It is a corridor between worlds. And those who walk it may not always come back unchanged. Our journey ends here, among Pennsylvania's most haunted natural places. We have walked through burning towns and cursed forests, over bridges where pale figures beckon, and down roads where the ordinary twists into the impossible. And yet, the land itself still breathes, still watches. The soil holds secrets it will never surrender. The trees whisper stories that only the wind dares to carry. What makes these places so terrifying is not only what has been seen but what has been felt. The icy grip of something unseen in the night. The sound of footsteps that follow too closely when no one is there. The strange sensation that the ground beneath you is more than earth, that it is memory and grief and something far darker pressing upward from below. But the truth is this: Pennsylvania is filled with places like these. Ancient hills, endless woods, forgotten paths, each hiding scars of history, echoes of pain, and fragments of those who never left. We have only scratched the surface. And maybe, just maybe, some of you listening will one day stand in these very places. The smoke of Centralia curling at your feet, the shadows of Cook Forest shifting just out of sight, or the cold silence of Pine Loganton Road swallowing the sound of your car. If you go, remember, nature does not always welcome you. Sometimes it keeps what it catches. And if you hear the whispers, if you see the shapes, if you feel the cold settle into your chest, do not linger. Because out there, in the haunted places of Pennsylvania, you are never truly alone. So tell me, which of these cursed landscapes would you dare to visit? Or perhaps you already have. Perhaps you know of a place where the land itself feels wrong, where the air is too still, and the silence too heavy. Share your story below if you're brave enough. If you've made it this far, thank you for journeying into the dark with me tonight. Subscribe for more haunted tales, like this video if the shadows followed you, and remember, the most terrifying ghosts are not always in abandoned houses or forgotten prisons. Sometimes they are waiting for you under the trees. Until next time, stay in the light, keep moving forward, and never, never look back when the forest calls your name.